From the studio of WTAP Plus, you're watching Women of the MOV with host Phyllis Smith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Influential Women of the Mid-Ohio Valley. I am your host, Phyllis Smith, and with me today is Wendy Tuck. She is on Parkersburg City Council. Wendy, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yes. So I know people see you on the news quite frequently. So I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. Can you kind of tell us about your journey to becoming a Parkersburg City Councilwoman?
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to fifth grade. Really,
fifth grade.
I know,
throwing it way back.
Really,
yeah.
But it was just such a pivotal moment. I heard an incredible preacher on the Good Samaritan. It was like, that's me. That's what I want to be when I grow up.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
so I just kind of kept going and found lots of different ways to do that.
Yes. So that inspired you to run for office?
Well, not in the immediate, because for a long time it was serving others. You know, I worked with, worked in a nursing home. I worked in a school for kids with substance abuse. I worked for Good Shepherd Episcopal Church for 5 or 6 years in kind of a neighborhood housing ministry, which is exactly what I'm doing now, only 20, 30 years ago. But I was doing a lot of service work, service providing, and I kind of felt like politics was more the policies. Like, what was it about housing, or what was it about safe streets or police relationships that made the downstream better? So that's kind of why I wanted to go up, is I felt like I had spent most of my life with foster kids and school teaching and seniors and things like that. And I really felt like city council would be a way to influence kind of the decisions that affected the lives of people who were doing the services or who needed them.
Yes. So you've been on council for 6 years now?
Yep.
Wow. I'm sure you've learned a lot in that time.
Still learning.
Yes. What do you think are some of the biggest issues that are facing the area?
I think the biggest one for me is I watched the plants leave. I watched all Corning and, so many of them either closed up and left. And we really haven't found, I don't think, we found our way back to what makes a vibrant, lively community where people have jobs, they're stable, they have good health care, they have good housing, schools are good. We're doing a good job with what we have, but I'm just thinking that, when you have a majority of your people with good paying jobs, it just adds to the quality of life overall. And so I think that general development is just a big issue facing us. How do we do that so our kids don't all leave? We want them to, be able to stay in West Virginia and have good work, good lives here.
Absolutely. And I know you are the only Democrat on Parkersburg City Council?
I'm the only Democrat in Wood County.
In Wood County?
Yes.
The whole county?
Yeah.
So what is that like, navigating that?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't associate it with party. I associate it more with things like how do you work together, like working together. I find that I'm a very believe that I represent my constituents. I don't get elected and then do my own thing for 4 years. I'm very engaged with what's on your mind, what's going on, why is that a problem, what's not working, what is working. So my orientation is very much that they elected me, I represent them, I serve them. So I think if there was a difference of quality, it might be more that. I do find myself, and I think it's more my background, frankly, of my church service has just always been a deep, deep part of who I am. And so where people might think, oh, that's a Democrat or Republican issue, I don't find that to be the case. I find it more, are you more oriented towards service and helping other people?
Yeah, that's kind of I'm sure that's a good way to help get like a middle ground, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have lines that way. I mean, because like I keep saying, sidewalks, they don't care if you're Democrat or Republican.
Right.
The streets don't
everyone
care.
has to walk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm sure that's been very challenging. Have you encountered any kind of like hostility, or if you have, how do you navigate? I feel like people's tempers sometimes boil over, or it can just get kind of contentious. How do you navigate that, or are you concerned for your safety at all, or anything like that?
I think I had to wrestle with my own prejudice as much as anybody else's, frankly. But the first time I ran was right in the middle of COVID.
Oh.
So I mean, I signed up in February and COVID hit, and
I can't believe I was like, wait, that wasn't that long ago.
So
And it's
no,
like, well,
it
yes,
wasn't. But
yes,
I couldn't knock on doors. We couldn't have public meetings. So my whole campaign started with letters, and letting people and saying, "Hey, do you have any needs? Are you housebound? Can we help in any way?" When it started opening up a little bit later, I could go to people's porches. And I think I had two that said, don't come on my porch. I've never voted for a Democrat, and I never will. And it never got hostile, in that way. But it was just more like, don't have anything to do with you. But I think that I definitely have done something right, because I did not have any of that this time, not at all. And the funny thing is, I grew up with a social work dad and a nurse mom, so we were very take care of each other. And some of my go-to people in District 4. Can I mention names?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
John Sandy and Jack Hart and Roy Tremblay, and they were all like super conservative Marine, people that I just didn't know as a kid growing up with social worker parents, frankly. But they became they were like my go-to people when I had a difficult issue. Scott Heckert is another one. But when I had an issue where I was really like, how do I make this decision? They just spoke straight from the heart. They were absolutely true and blunt, and they all said, follow your conscience, follow who you are. It was never advice, but it was more like, because they were strong in who they were, they expected me to be strong in who I was. And it was really a powerful moment for me to realize we're not that different. We're really not. We're all driven by conscience, by morality, by what we want best for our country and for our citizens. But
yes. And now, have you worked with a lot of people? I know council kind of changes hands a little bit. Have you had to work with a lot of different personalities on council?
Very much. Now, I would think that sometimes it has been more difficult to find people who share my values, or not. I shouldn't say that. It's share my orientation. I think the values are not in question, but our orientation is, and where a lot of people are very content, really, to accept the information they're given. I always have 15 questions. It's like, well, why is that? Well, why, how come that? And why did, so I've just always been driven by curiosity and by really, when I worked at Eve, for instance, and the Volunteer Center, we were always risk managing. We're always looking at, okay, what are the unintended consequences? So if you take this decision, what could happen as a result of that? So my training in that field was very much like, okay, it looks good on the surface, what's behind the closed doors? And so, that could be seen as mistrust or bad faith or that kind of thing. But it's really trying to be careful and trying to be mindful of my job, as I think, is to be kind of the watchdog a little bit of making sure that we don't do something that we might regret later, or might have we should have thought through that more, which is why I like a lot of eyes on the process.
What is that? Measure once, or no, measure twice, cut once, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love the story of how when there's a plane crash, and they always examine the black box because they don't ever want that plane crash. But it's like a huge. Nobody takes it personally, but they look at what didn't work, where was the problem, and it's a collaborative thing of what didn't happen, why, who did what, but there's no blame, there's responsibility. But I love that concept, because your goal is that it doesn't happen again. And if you don't have really honest conversations about what wasn't in place, or did something just get overlooked or misplaced. So I kind of have that mentality in my head about and that's what I love about teams of people meeting together, is you all see it from a different angle. And by the time, if you have one point of view, you have one point of view. But if you have 6 or 7, then you have multiple points of view, and you're more likely to find, I think, the mistakes or the risks with more eyes on the situation.
Right. Or you can find maybe like something to go forward with, maybe a different approach.
Exactly. Things that you probably wouldn't have thought of. I can't tell you how many times that's happened with my conversations.
I remember, I think last year, homelessness was a big, I know it's still, but I remember you hosted a kind of a forum where you had all these different groups of people coming together, and I think Zach Huffman did it with you as well. Yeah. So I love to. I feel like you're very grassroots, which is good, because I feel like people they know kind of what would be most helpful. I think maybe starting from the ground up. Mm-hmm. So I know. So homelessness, are there any other topics that are really passionate for you?
Yeah, and just to talk about the homelessness just for a minute is we had that town hall where we had, because the lady had died in last winter.
Yes.
And that kind of sparked like, we don't want that.
Right.
So we had the town hall, and then we had a meeting of another 100 or so volunteers. And out of that has come a really strong collaboration between the 2 shelters and the 2 warming centers. And maybe people say, nothing came out of that. But we, to have Latrobe Street Mission and House to Home and the Gathering and the Salvation Army really collaborating and making sure that nobody freezes to death.
Yes.
That's been huge. And I think that, as those relationships get stronger, you'll see the outgrowth even further.
And I feel like there's been maybe less abandoned house fires, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the fires are down. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I know that was kind of in tandem, kind of happening at the same time. Oh, so yes, I mean, homelessness, that's a huge issue. I mean, everywhere. So that's great. And I know the recycling, I know that's kind of been a big thing. Do you have any thoughts kind of on what's happening in that situation?
I think the big question for me and for people that I was talking to was just the question of, is it a essential service that the city should provide, or is it just another thing that we should contract out, like the swimming pool? We contract out the pool, we contract out paving, the things that are too big or too specialized, we contract that out. But I really felt that there'd been some problems within the sanitation department, but I didn't think it was anything that couldn't be fixed or addressed. If I can just go back to the housing for a minute.
Of course. Let's bring the car back around. Yeah,
I'll just bring it back a minute because part of what I love is the working with networks, and at the same time, the homelessness was an issue. Do you remember the study that the city did on the housing and the lack of affordable housing back in 2022, maybe, or 20? Mm-hmm. So after that, a number of groups started talking about what could we do, and that led to those housing expos. And we had 3 years of those, and we had, the first one was, we probably had 50 or 60 people, but by the time we did the third year, we had probably 60 vendors, but it was like such a collaboration between the banks and the consumer credit and Habitat and the Trobe Street Mission. It was top to bottom, like what are the housing needs and how can we help? So we're getting ready to have another, starting to talk to people about what can we do? 'Cause
Right.
we don't have enough housing.
And I'm sure that takes so much coordination.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes I think people forget, how much probably effort went into, your homeless town hall or just like any kind of thing that you do. It really takes a lot of coordination.
The best thing, though, is you build relationships over time. So you might, some people I met when I was working at Good Shepherd. I've still known them for 25 years. And so it's really easy. I think there's good trusting relationships, and you can say, hey, Shalene, would you come and help with this? Or, hey, Robin, from Habitat, or, somebody at West Banco, and say, what, because it's like, what do they bring to the table? They're already doing it. They're already doing these super jobs. So you're just linking them to other people.
And are you from Parkersburg?
No, we moved here in 80.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my second son was born in 1982. No, sorry, he was born in 80. We moved here in 82.
Oh, where are you from originally?
I grew up in Arkansas.
Really?
I'm an Arkansas Razorback.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Very cool. I was like, I wonder if Wendy is actually from Parkersburg.
No, this is my adopted home.
Yeah, yeah.
We actually had moved to Roane County, Spencer, and
Okay.
we were just taken in by residents there, and then Steve was a roofer, and the bottom kind of fell out of construction just in the late 70s. And so we just moved to Parkersburg. He got a job with not Children's Home Society, but Wood County Child Care Center. And he just kind of stayed and rose through the ranks. And so we've always had just this common commitment to kids and foster kids and making families healthy and doing good for kids.
Yes.
It's like our
So I
passion.
know you said you ran during the pandemic. What kind of triggered you to say, like, now is the time to run for public office?
My predecessor, Eric Barber, he came around, the year before. I wasn't even thinking of politics, frankly. I thought, it's doing good. The city's doing good. I'm happy. And then when Eric ran, I really liked him. He had this kind of roll up your sleeves and let's get to work kind of energy. And so I felt, like, oh, great, we got a young guy that's, going to do all this great stuff. And he got the tiny housing initiative kind of going, and he'd done some other things. But he got very embroiled, I think, in national politics, and I didn't like the direction he was going. I felt, and then he just wasn't paying as much attention, I don't think, to local affairs. But I found myself thinking that there was, to me, there's a measure of respect, of common sense, of service that I felt was missing in his approach. And I felt that I wanted to go back to when people cared about each other and worked together as neighborhoods and neighbors. So that was kind of my goal.
Yeah, did you feel kind of any apprehension about running or anything like that?
No, I guess I felt like if I wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't happen. It was kind of like, I couldn't lose. I was very content doing birth to 3, and at first I thought I could do both, and then I thought, no, it's one or the other. I needed to commit to putting my energy in one place. But
And so you've been re-elected how many times?
just once. Yeah, I was elected in 2020, and then I was elected in 2024. So this is my second term.
Oh, okay, so you've got a couple more years
Yeah,
left.
2 more.
Two more. Is it too early to say if you'd like?
No, I'm 72. I'll be 73. And
really?
I think that you need to make way for younger
I thought
people.
you were in your 50s.
Oh, gosh bless you. Oh my, you're so
Yeah.
sweet. I think it's crawling on the floor after those little kids for all those years.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like I was pretty agile. But no, I mean, this sounds kind of silly, but I really want some time with my husband before we croak. It's like I want to just be a human being. I've worked really hard all my life, and I want some time to
Deserve
just
it.
chill.
Yes.
And just enjoy each other.
Yes, just relax. Maybe go on a vacation or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll still be busy, but not this busy, maybe.
Right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I feel like city council is their, like, not, I don't want to say side hustle, but it's not their main job. Like,
Right. Yeah.
you know, or like, yeah, I know that like a lot of them are small business owners or they have other jobs.
Right.
And then it's another thing that you take on. Like, I can't imagine kind of how much that is a time commitment, like to be on Parkersburg City
Right.
Council.
Right. Those of us who are retired actually do have more time to go out and do things. Like I have office hours, and I was doing it twice a week, but Smitty's closed down for the winter, so I can't do that. But I meet my constituents every Friday, you know, and just answer questions about the housing program or the National Night Out or the Boys Club. I mean, just whatever's on people's mind, you know, so I'm very available. But people that work through the day, they can't do that. They take a lot of calls at night, I think.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of like being available for constituents, I wanted to kind of just pick your brain a little bit about, I know council changed the rules about public forum and speaking. It's got to be what's on the agenda. How do you feel about that?
I do not like it. I believe that two things. I think there's a fundamental right to speak. I know council has the right to limit agenda items, but I do think that it's a constitutional right, and certainly, as Chris Rexroad said about the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. And when people came, they would speak about things that sometimes we had no idea was a problem, or they would come with suggestions that, like, we have the ASL lady doing the interpretation now because of somebody. So we are missing a huge portion, I think, of what's going on in real Parkersburg and the rest of Parkersburg.
I know.
So I want that back.
Yeah,
a whole lot.
I was going to ask you, I know the justification for that kind of was, I think I heard it was like, people were spreading like lies or misinformation about council. What do you think from that angle? What do you think about that response
I think
to changing it?
I think it might have happened once or twice. There was a concern about the Resiliency Center, and I think there was a statement about the wages of the sanitation workers, and you could have corrected those things, right? You know, the president can speak, and I think they could have corrected that immediately. But I think to shut down the public voice for an entire year because of one or two, I mean, we all make mistakes. I mean, you know, the public's going to make as many mistakes as we are, but to shut off an entire year of what people care about most. And I think the problem with that is when you don't listen, you kill off people's caring. And we're a very caring community. We're passionate. I mean, people care. You know, they care about things. And you tell them, sit down, be quiet, and don't do anything. And what do you think people are going to feel about the city or about their government? I mean, you want to feel like they're an important part of Parkersburg life, you know?
I feel like you want an engaged populace.
You do.
Yeah.
And everything I've read about lively, vibrant cities is engaged population. And in our 2030 comprehensive plan, over and over and over in those strategic efforts are support grassroots efforts, support community initiatives. And it's like, okay, you know, like that's such an important part of what makes any city, you know, lively.
Now, I'm not sure if you might know this, but I mean, is this something common that's like happening, or other councils doing this? Is this something that kind of uniquely happened to council, or do you think it's a sign of the times?
That's a good question. I don't think it's common. I think it has been. There's a couple of legal precedents, but I don't think it's common. And I think that when you have I know people don't like to be criticized, and I think that that's come up a couple of times. But I think if you have a government that has the feel of engaging with constituents, keeping them informed, keeping them in the loop, letting them know, hey, we got this big thing coming up. Like, they worked on the pavilion for 8 years. I mean, it was a community conversation for years, not always out in the public, but it was there. The bridge was the same thing. I mean, people knew about that. But sanitation we had no meetings and no public conversation for an entire year. When after we were told it was an issue, there was nothing. There was silence. What I meant to say is, when people want to cut off criticism, it gives the impression that you don't care, you're not listening, you don't want anybody to know, which is the exact opposite of building trust in your government. That you want this back and forth, that we're listening, we care, we're going to share information, and we're partners, we're working together. And you cut off the voice and you lose that.
So hypothetically, so if that were to get reversed, would that take action by council? I guess they'd have to vote on it, have readings, and
it'd be pretty simple, really. It would take 3 sponsors to put it on the agenda, and it would take a vote, 5 majority, 5 votes. It would be pretty simple to bring that back.
I know personally, when I was a reporter, I would go to council meetings. I was kind of shocked. I didn't really know. I feel like people are in the dark about how local government actually works and runs. And it's a really almost like a civic lesson when you go to a council meeting to see how it works, the difference between a reading and an ordinance, and, amending something and getting a motion, so was that something that you kind of were already familiar with, or did you have to learn a lot about that when you first got elected?
It's very formal, actually. Now, Vienna doesn't have a charter, so they don't have to go by the same rules that we do. But we have, there's a very logical order to how things are brought up and how you vote on them. And I want to give a big shout out to Carrie Tallarico. She brought in a group of students, and they did a mock city council, and I learned stuff there. I was going, oh, that's
when you know it's good.
But you have to study Robert's Rules of Order. You need to really know the charter. You need to really dig into how are things supposed to work.
And do you think, as a woman, that's a little bit intimidating? I feel like maybe sometimes that kind of information is gatekept, or gatekept, or you know what I mean? Or what I'm saying?
Like, there's not an intentional sharing of information. Like, here, well, the door's open. Let me show you how it works.
Kind of like finance, It's kind of, they gatekeep that information. Do you feel like... Yeah. Did you kind of encounter that? I'm just kind of curious.
I don't think I did. I think Sharon Cool probably did. I think she was the first woman for quite some time, and she was the only woman. And then when I was elected, there were actually 3 of us, and so I think that helped a little bit. That there were. It wasn't just one. One of 9, but I do think that. My best tool for learning how to do government was taking Toastmaster classes.
What's that?
Toastmasters. Learning how to do public speaking, and learning how to think on your feet, and learning how to put your ideas together. And but I think they should teach public speaking. They say that that's the worst fear next to death is public speaking.
Really?
And death. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But I do wish there was more attention given to expressing, procedure, how. But once you learn it, and I'm still learning. We all get mixed up. You'll watch and go, why did you do that?
I'm sure it's hard, you're processing the information as it's being given to you. There's possibly an audience. You've got a bunch of other council people, process it. I mean, I feel like it could be, if you have a question, it could be intimidating to say, hey, wait up a second, I have a question about this.
It is.
Or to slow a process that is, going along. And so have you ever struggled with that?
I have. And, I like I said, I've asked a lot of questions, and I'm not psychic, but sometimes I feel like I can hear the brains of people around me going, "Oh no, here she goes again. Would she just shut up?" So I sometimes feel like I shouldn't be the only one asking questions. There should be 7 people, 9 people, all saying, hey, questions. I mean, I think to do your job, you need to know, and I think the budget was also. People said, oh, don't worry about it, you'll pick it up. Well, you don't. It's a $34 million budget. And, we'll have budget hearings, but it's 3 days and you've got a $34 million budget. And there is no way you're going to pick up, if you don't already have some background in budgeting. I mean, the organizations I worked with were, probably close to $1 million worth of grants. But even so, the city's much more complicated, and I really wish there had been a tutorial or a sit-down, here's how the budget works. This is what these funds do and mean. Then when you get to things like sanitation, you go, oh, I get it. This is what an enterprise fund is, or this is what capital reserve is. You go, oh, okay, I got it. But then you get on the floor, and sometimes you can sound really ignorant if you don't really understand the difference between those kind of funds. So that has been hard.
Well, Wendy, I just want to ask you before we wrap up, is there any type of goals that you have for the rest of your term? Is there anything that you have your sights set on?
Yeah. One of the things we did last year was this Parkersburg Engagement Project, which was picking, doing large community surveys to find out what people cared about and then working together to find a solution. So we'll be talking about that in terms of this coming year. So there's going to be a lot of implementation of the solutions that came up. So but partly it's community engagement. Like, how do you do it civilly? How do you do it collaboratively? And I think we still have a lot to learn about that. And so that will be that whole question of people who are addicted, people who are homeless. They're not the same, but often we lump them together. But I would like to find real solutions to those. And housing. That's just one of my big. I live in District 4, and so many of our houses are falling apart. They're old, and what are you gonna? You can't wait until they all fall and have to demolish every single one of them. So there's got to be some other models. So I'm working on that. I've been talking about the idea maybe of a revolving loan fund, a local investment, to have some way of having funds that we can fix these older homes before they fall apart and have to be demolished. So I think that, and housing, I would say the substance abuse and child abuse is always a concern of mine, and yes. I'm always kind of part of the coalition to prevent. Wood County Prevention Council and Children's Home Society has a prevention council, and there's a lot of prevention. Kids will just always be part of my. It's kind of a quieter, it's not necessarily a city initiative, but it is something that affects every single family in this valley. So those are my goals, I think.
Well, Wendy, thank you for coming on today. Is there anything you'd like to add before we leave? Anything you'd like to?
I would just like to encourage people to get involved and stay involved. That, we are who makes the city. It's not one person. It's not just us. We are meant to do your will. It's taxpayer resources. We're supposed to be good stewards of that, and I hope that we do a good job. And I need that, that interaction with other people and with my counselors to make that work for the best.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Wendy, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. That has been another Women of the Mid-Ohio Valley podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
You asked really...